Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to the Planet SkyFF podcast, where everything revolves around £50,000. Not normally for me or Suj, but perhaps for our guest this week. Let me introduce you to the brilliant Niall Murphy. How are you, Niall?
I am good, James, and thanks very much for having me on. I'm a long time listener, long time admirer. Enjoy the conversations between you and Suj. Tune in every week, hoping that he's not forgotten to change his captain. Unfortunately, more recently, that's been quite frequently the case. But no, thanks for having me on and looking forward to having a chat.
You're very welcome, mate. It has been described to me that you might be arguably the best Sky fantasy football manager. I want to say in the world, but it's a bit cheeky. Let's say in the UK. In any case, your consistency in Sky is quite remarkable, though. Can you tell us a little bit about your history, how you got into the game, how well you've done in previous years?
Yeah, so probably started playing the game about maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago, back when you could only change the captaincy once per weekend. The glory days, I think, as Luke calls them. Although I think he was doing pretty well in those days. I was always looking at the leaderboard. And to be honest, he's part of the reason why I got into it because his articles on the Scout every week were kind of the only source of Sky content that were out there at the time. And over time, I've just continued playing the game. I've dabbled a little bit in some of the other formats, but Sky is really the only one I take seriously. I'm playing FPL for the first time this year properly.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it's not a lot of people get into Sky playing other game formats, but this has always been the one I've been interested in. To be honest with you, the reason and I think one of the questions coming up with why my team's open, I'll come to that. But I got into this basically by a mates league. There's 10 or 12 of us that play every year and still play every year. And that, to be honest, until I started doing well, that was the main focus. And to be honest, even to a certain extent now, it still is trying to win that league. In terms of history, so the best finish I've ever had was third, and that was the season that our good friend Dan Cox won it. And I'm adamant that if there was one more week in the season, I would have been there.
Oh, he
But
disagreed with that.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did. But I actually that season was kind of chaos because I think I was outside the top 300, 400 at the end of March. So pretty much where we are now. And I just went on an absolute heater. Just got so like obviously there's an element of luck with all this stuff, but I hoarded a lot of transfers and went really aggressive, brought in players and they all paid off. Um, Took myself by surprise a little bit on that. So third, I think I finished 17th one year as well. I've had a 35th, a 40th, and then a couple like lower down in the top 100. So yeah, I mean, pretty good record. I don't know what the secret sauce is, honestly. I just
Oh,
kind of
you can
like
go there, mate.
kind of play my own game a
We
bit,
all want to
right?
know.
Yeah, no, I think something I don't get too caught up on, and this is a bit of a difference between myself and some of the other kind of like really prominent content creators and top managers, like for example, Paul, who's a good mate of mine, and I'm seeing him at the weekend, so I don't want to cuss him out too much. But Paul's approach is very much methodical decision,
Yeah.
logic-based decisions on what the ownership is. Basically, don't make an arse of it. And then on the flip side, you kind of go to the other extreme. You've got someone like Luke, who is like, I'm going to take Hail Marys. I'm going to make the best decisions that I think, are right for my team. And I probably lie somewhere a little bit in the middle. But my approach has always been, look, if you think that's the best decision and if you think that's the best player for your team, then do it. Don't get too hung up on what other people are doing. And that's part of the reason why I always leave my team open as well. Because, if others are looking at my team and thinking, oh, he's doing this, why don't I do that? I'm like, well, go, be my guest. But I'm just going to keep making the decisions that I make. And I think that's the best thing you can do as a manager in this game.
I don't know why I don't leave my team out because I tell everyone what it is every week. Mind you, no one's going to go looking for me where what my rank is at 1700 or whatever. You're 16th. You mentioned about finishing third from 400th a few years ago. I was going back, probably 6 years, I think, that season. Do you believe it's on that you can finish first from here?
I think so. This is the highest I've ever been at this stage of the season. But equally, I've played the game a little bit differently. So I've talked about where I've finished third in the past, and I think all the seasons have done well. My approach to the game has always been like keep the transfers back until the end, and then make maximum gains. So there might be opportunities, say for 6 for 3, 7 for 4s, whatever it may be. And I just load up on the teams with the extra fixtures right at the end of the season. And then obviously with the fixture carnage, there's games that get dropped in, single match days that others might miss because they're struggling at that point. And I've always made sure I capitalised on those. This year's been a bit different. And I think the change of the transfer count from 40 to 50 has kind of moved things on in my mind a bit. And I've been a lot more aggressive with the transfers this year. So while, yes, I probably am higher than I have been previously at this time of the year, I've got comparatively less transfers than I had then. So I've kind of gone for it a bit earlier. That's paid off. But there will be people, and if you look at the top 100, some of the names in there, the recognizable names, I think whoever wins it is going to have to play not quite a perfect game because it's never perfect, but somewhere close to it. And even between me and the guy who's top, there's Paul's got 2 teams, Fergie's in there, Barry's in there. There's some other like really serious managers. So I don't know. I wouldn't say my aim is genuinely. My aim isn't to win it. It's to finish as high as I can. And if I end up finishing at the top, then pints on me.
It's achievable. And I mean, it's a nice story what you said about obviously the year in 16, 17 will give hope to people who are outside the top 100 to think that they can still finish very well. Listen, you need a lot to go in your way right now, but potentially people listening have perhaps got 20 transfers. I mean, what's Suj got left? 20. I mean, he's not doing that, but was he 26, 27 or something left? Similarly to you, I've used more transfers than would have been ideal at this stage. But I think there's stories there that can inspire people to go and push hard for it. And this feels like a reset period during this international break, doesn't it? A little bit of chill. This is it. Final run in now. You've got a lot of Arsenal players. We know that because your team's open. Is there a plan?
That's a good question.
Without telling me every transfer move
no,
that you want to make.
To be honest with you, I think like I used to do obviously the pods with Luke. And so one of the best things about coming on here and having a chat is that it helps crystallise thoughts in your mind. If I'm honest with you, I haven't thought about exactly who I'm going to move to, but I look at my team and I think, well, Rashford's not in there. That's a pretty glaring omission. He'll need to come back in. Haaland's not in there. Same. So there's probably 2 transfers. Depending on where we go at the weekend, if Haaland starts, then maybe need to make a move, take someone out preemptively, which is always frustrating and not naturally what I try and do.
Yeah.
But I think that makes sense in the position. And then, to be honest, I don't want to take out too many players that I can see myself wanting to keep long term. So I'm thinking like Saka, I guess he stays. Saliba and Zinchenko are probably could be classed as season keepers. I appreciate there are fixture gains in the near term, but I'm less inclined to bring them out just now, especially as we look towards, we've got the Southampton game in a few weeks' time. It's the Friday night. So
yeah,
the gains in the meantime are there, but they're marginal, especially when there's players you definitely want to bring back. But maybe the likes of Gabriel, Odegaard, Martinelli, possibly likely to move them on. Martinelli's been an absolute godsend for me. I mean, the game he was benched against Villa, he's probably part of the reason why I'm 16. The game he was benched against Villa, I was out playing golf and I was like, I was seconds away from taking him out. And for some reason or another, I just decided, I don't know whether I was just like going to my bag to put a club back and I just forgot about it. But I didn't do it. I was going to move him on to Zinchenko that day, albeit Zinchenko scored and it looked like, I made a complete hash of it. Since then, Martinelli's just gone on the most outrageous run. And he's part of the reason why I ended up being up there. And that was quite lucky, to be honest.
Yeah, I can think of some people I know. It's like Martinelli out. For the benefit of the audio listeners, I just put my hand up. I'm not the only one who's been in that position. It looked like he was in real danger of losing his spot in the team, or at least his expected minutes was becoming a serious concern because of Trossard. And this Nketiah setback and Trossard's performances through the middle has actually ended up helping Martinelli further. You're not going to want to move any of those Arsenal players you've got for Saturday, I wouldn't have thought particularly, other than once we've perhaps got confirmation on Saliba, who, as you said, brilliant asset all season, 7.4. Ideally, you'd just probably leave him in. What sort of injury would make you move him now? Like if it's, he could be back for Liverpool, do you just leave it? Or
yeah, I think I think if he's going to be back for Liverpool, guaranteed, he's just missing this one game. At the price he's at, doing some kind of forward forecasting with my team and messing around with transfers, it looks like you've probably done the same. It looks like at some point you're going to want to have Haaland, Kane, and Salah at the same time potentially, and that's going to
Not for me, no. But go on.
right, okay, fair enough. Um, and that always puts a bit more pressure on the budget.
Yeah.
So I am just trying to be mindful of the fact that while I've got loads in the bank just now, obviously Haaland will come back in. You do need to make sure you've got that flexibility still in place. But I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts on Salah then, if you're not planning on getting him back in while you've got Kane and Haaland.
Oh no, I'm getting Salah back in. But to be honest, it's more a case of probably Kane will go for me after
Right.
Tottenham play Bournemouth on Saturday the 15th. I think I can live without. I'd probably be happy to captain a Newcastle player. Just go with Trippier when Newcastle play Tottenham Sunday the 23rd. I've got alternative options Thursday the 27th and Sunday the 30th. And although Kane's last 4 fixtures are okay, there's definitely going to be gains there with the likes of City, United, Brighton players. Certainly those 3 at a minimal. Liverpool got a good run over that period as well. I wouldn't say Tottenham's last fixtures are better than Liverpool, for example. So part of my strategy at the moment is to go quite heavy on Liverpool Monday the 17th when they go to Leeds. Ideally, I'd like to get 5, but having sat down and properly looked at a plan, it's probably going to be 4, I think. And the fact now we've got these game week 35, or I should say match week 35 TV games announced. I mentioned last week about ideally would like Liverpool to play the day before Manchester City. Currently, that's how it's landed. So just to cover off, I think just while we're speaking about it, that weekend set of fixtures, the Saturday the 6th, we've got Brentford play Chelsea, Liverpool host Brentford, Tottenham host Crystal Palace, Wolves host Villa. So there's certainly a Liverpool against Tottenham competition there for Kane. That's okay. On the Sunday, Arsenal go to Newcastle, Manchester City host Leeds, and Manchester United go to West Ham. And then we've got 3 games on the Monday. You might want to mark that down now. Monday the 8th, it's a bank holiday here for those with the VPNs who are overseas and might not realise it will be a 3 p.m. deadline on Monday the 8th of May. Fulham host Leicester at 3 o'clock. That's not a TV game. Brighton Everton 5:30. Nottingham Forest Southampton at 8 o'clock. One of those fixtures can still move. That's Manchester City's game against Leeds. Could be brought forward to the Saturday, I would presume, to a Saturday evening kickoff, probably a 7:45. That will be moved if Manchester City have a Champions League semi-final first leg on the Tuesday afterwards. Everything else is obviously locked in terms of fixtures. And obviously the week before, we've now got confirmation of Brighton against Manchester United, single game day, Thursday the 4th, and the 2 Wednesday fixtures that we were expecting, Liverpool against Fulham and Manchester City against West Ham. So my plan now is, as I said, go quite heavy Liverpool Monday the 17th, where they've got additional fixtures, come off Sunday the 7th, ideally if City play on the Sunday against Leeds, and you would see the team, and then they've got additional fixtures. They'll have 2 extra over Liverpool for what's left. So too will Manchester United obviously play that day. And when we get there, it might be they're still in Europe. It's complicated. We don't want to go heavy. But I've got a couple of different plans at the moment, which would mean landing on that Sunday the 7th and having 6 transfers left, 5 transfers left, or 4. I'm interested to know if you've looked that far ahead, how many you think you might have at that stage.
So, as in, I'm sat here, let's say it's the morning of Sunday, the 7th of May.
Yeah.
Yep. So you've got 4 game weeks left after that, right?
Four were you kind of halfway through? I mean, 4 left, plus there's going to be obviously extra midweek fixtures. And obviously the Newcastle Brighton game that we thought was probably going to go in around about Thursday the 20th of April, obviously at this stage hasn't been announced. I think we have to assume it's probably not going to be, and that's going to be in that period at the end as well.
Yeah. I think so. I agree with what you're saying about Liverpool. I mean, they've got from Monday the 17th of April. That's a good jump on point, it looks like, because they've got 6 games for 3 over quite a lot of teams.
Yeah.
Most of the teams that you'd actually, like Arsenal, Man City, Man United, Chelsea. So that looks like a great opportunity. Yeah. And I can see. I just can't. You talked about five. I'm not even sure there are five players from Liverpool that you could consider right now. Though, right? I mean, you've got possibly you could bring in Van Dijk, Alisson, Darwin, and Salah, maybe.
Okay, close enough. The other one for me at the moment is Konaté.
Right. Okay. I suppose he's pretty good on, isn't he?
Yeah, 9.2, and I think with them having no European or cup commitments domestically, I think he'll play regularly with Van Dijk. Now, Van Dijk would be the one I probably couldn't get to, and I'd go for the other four. That's part of my strategy at the moment.
Yeah, that makes sense. And this is what I'm saying about budget, right? Trying to make sure you've got as much flexibility as possible, because clearly on that night you're going to want to go into Liverpool. The assets are more expensive, so got to be ready for that. And then, so on Sunday the 7th of May, looks like it'll depend. So I think if you steam right into Liverpool, right, let's say you're going into that game with 5 Liverpool, you're going to want at least 6 or 7 transfers, I would say, because by the time you come off the Liverpool players, you want to have a little bit of flexibility left. So you want to have at least 2 or 3 transfers to get you through the end of the season, because you know what it's like that time.
Something will happen.
Something will happen. There'll be injuries. Teams will be on the beach. It'll be it'll be a nightmare. So I always try and make sure I've got at least 2 or 3 going into those last few weeks. But if you're coming off Liverpool, presumably you're heading into like Man City or something at that point, I reckon you hold them all the way through. So as long as you're comfortable that if something goes wrong drastically, you've got a little bit of left in the bank still, or transfer wise, to address those issues, I think you can get by with probably 3 after you've made the changes on Sunday the 7th.
Yeah, I know the 11 players that I want to have for that midweek set before. So land on Wednesday the 3rd when those games kick off. I know what I want my team to look like at that point. And there's nothing spare. Basically, it might be 0.1 or so. But the flexibility in terms of how many transfers I have left, it probably brings us nicely onto this weekend, because one route has getting Haaland in and one doesn't. Where's your I mean, it doesn't really matter for me at my rank, but it's even more reason I think possibly take on, and just to feedback on what I spoke about last week, saying I had the money in the bank to go Saliba to Haaland. A lot of the feedback I had was, yeah, actually, James, we're considering similar. We're all looking to get him back as soon as possible. That seemed to be the feedback I got last week. So I think plenty will buy Haaland on Saturday. If he's in the team, he's a little bit of a doubt at the moment. I suspect with no midweek fixture afterwards, if he's 80% or so, he'll play. So it seems like a lot will buy him back this week. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm a little bit torn though myself, because if he has been carrying a knock, you heard the comments that his dad made about, he's not trained in 2 weeks. It's going to be difficult for him. I reckon he does play, especially given how big the game is.
Yeah, agreed.
But if he's not 100%, is there a chance he might play 70, 60, right? I don't know. Is Saka a brilliant captaincy option at home to Leeds?
Yeah,
absolutely yes. So it's not as clear cut, possibly, especially as you'd be taking, in my case, I'd be taking out Tony before he plays, and he's obviously got the midweek game too. So you're getting effectively 2 games from Haaland with the captaincy versus 2 games from Tony without. And then I'll definitely be getting him back in for the Southampton game, because there's no chance I'll be going into that without him. So,
really? Because I think for me, if I don't get him Saturday, I'll swallow it till City play Arsenal, I think, which is Wednesday the 26th. Yeah, you say that, but we've discussed it. There's 3 captaincies there's 3 alternative captaincies, which are quite clear on all those days. You mentioned Saka, obviously, this Saturday. You got Rashford at home to Everton when Haaland goes to Southampton, and you got Kane at home to Bournemouth when Haaland plays Leicester. And you won't see the City team for the Southampton-Leicester games. And obviously there's the Champions League fixtures either side. If there's concerns over him.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. But I think if it depends on your position, right? I think you've obviously talked about your position. You're trying to chase.
Oh, I would tell everybody else, just get him.
Yeah, trying to get back into it.
Yeah.
I think if you're in a position where you feel like, look, I need to make an educated gamble here. If his fitness isn't 100% and he's not playing at the weekend, say, then yeah, I can see absolute merit in leaving him for the Southampton and Leicester games and just bringing him back in a couple of weeks' time. For those of you who are maybe in a position that are more of a defense mode,
Game.
you're like, yeah, you've got to get him.
Yeah,
Because that
I'm
could
in
end
agreement.
your season. That could end your season. And I guess that's it. So,
Yeah,
you
no, mine ended about 6 months ago, so I'm not bothered, mate.
know, so yeah, I think if he starts, I'll probably bring him in. Um, certainly I'll get him next week because I'm not trying to navigate Southampton and Leicester without. And fair enough if it was two stern ties on the road, but those two games just reek of him scoring goals. So
Yeah, listen, as much as he could get rotated. Listen, he could get enough goals in one of them games that blows whoever else you're thinking about out the water. We know that. What did he get? 8 in the City's last 2 games, right? So the capability is not in question. But that's kind of the difference potentially between me having 6 left at that end period or 4. So there's a decision to make. Plus, this week I'm always a little bit loath, and this regularly backfires on me. I think if you get Haaland in, you see he's in the team, probably captain him, right? Because he's at the Etihad. And I tell you what, whenever I do that sort of thing, and I've got a decent captaincy there already, and I move it, it invariably backfires.
oh, I mean that's the thing, and it's not something that I would ever normally advise anyone to. I wouldn't even do it myself normally, like taking someone out before they play to bring someone else in. And it's only in extreme circumstances, and Haaland is probably one of the few players that you would ever consider doing something like that for. So yeah, it's definitely not good practice in general, like taking players out before they play. Just sometimes if you feel like you've made a mistake, you can correct it, but also like just riding it out, letting if you've brought someone in for a 4-4-2 and after the first two games it looks like they've been a disaster. If you hold them for the next games, generally you've made the decision based upon something. You've made the decision based upon some logic or something you believed. See it through, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You have the chance to come off in time. But I'm not a big fan of taking players out before they play because you can end up spending transfers and losing points.
Yeah, and as I said, even just moving the captaincy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if Saka outscores Haaland on Saturday, that feels like a waste.
It will, but it'll be a bullet dodged.
True. The other thing I'm really considering this Sunday is Bruno Fernandes. I know you haven't got Marcus Rashford at the moment. I presume you're probably not giving anything away by saying you probably intend to buy him on Sunday. I would assume, is that correct?
You're right. I don't think anyone's going to be surprised to hear that.
No. But I'm considering Bruno Fernandes as part of a chain move as well, because I've got a lot of Arsenal. I've not got as much as you, but it feels like coming straight off after Leeds, if I'm going to move some of it away, feels better rather than they've obviously got Sunday fixtures against Liverpool and West Ham coming up.
Yeah.
And I won't want to use Arsenal players to go to Liverpool on Monday 17th when they've got Southampton on Friday 21st. So if I'm going to move, it feels like it's got to be over this forthcoming period. And therefore, I'm considering a bit of a chain move that involves getting Bruno Fernandes for the 3 games, Newcastle, Brentford, and Everton. Probably wouldn't captain him in any of those over Rashford, and then moving him straight on Sunday the 9th to Wilfried Zaha, and carrying him for a little bit of a period. And yeah, Niall's face, for the benefit of the audio listeners, was like, Jesus, James, have you not had a week to reflect on this and decide? No, I'm still interested.
You know what? I grimaced, but to be honest, I actually quite like Zaha. I've had him in previous years, and he can be quite good. The fixtures he's got are unreal, and hopefully he's revitalised. You never know. He might be playing through the middle again. I don't know, but at least you'll get the game at the weekend to kind of scout him out, and see what he looks like.
Yeah.
If they're still looking turgid, I'm not sure, but he's got the volume of fixtures in the short space of time, and they're good games. So that's the kind of differential pick that I would make in previous years with like a little bit of extra transfer under my hat. You're a bit more freed up to go and make this moves like that. And look, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it does, bang, you're in the money. I remember a couple of years ago, I brought in Antonio for a run when he played. Maybe that game he played against Norwich, and he
God, yeah,
rattled them. And I think I captained him that day as well because there was barely anyone else around. So things like that, you can like bring in players that are not likely to be in 50, 60, 70% of teams, and And Zaha's got that potential where he takes pens, he could get a brace in any game. So I'm not going to try and talk anyone out of that. So, but and the Bruno move, like I'll be honest, I've looked at that as well. 3 decent games. Again, he's taking penalties, and as part of a daisy chain move, if you're getting 3 games out of a player like him, who, again, you could see, you could feasibly score.
I kind of asking myself that if he returns, if he got say 2 returns even across the 3 games, and a shot tier or something, would that be enough to justify it? And although it's 2 moves to get him in and get him out, the fact that I'm coming off of Arsenal, I think at the right time, almost means that it's not, because I'm just moving it. It's one and then another one.
The way
it feels worth it.
I agree. The way I see it is like I want to move an Arsenal player to Zaha, right? But in the meantime, I could spend an extra 1 transfer and get 3 games out of a premium asset in Bruno.
Yeah.
So I think the way you're looking at it, spot on. And actually, like, you'd expect Bruno to score at least 1 goal in those 3 games and probably pick up at least an assist, maybe some passing bonus, that kind of thing. So, no, I've looked at that myself, and I am considering it at the weekend. It's just about managing that transfer account. I think for me, because I'm used to playing the game, having like loads of transfers in hand at this stage of the season and just going gung ho, it feels a little bit different to be in a place where I've got above the average transfer account that's been like shared by the Twitter account, but I've not got above the average probably of the Premier players that are up there. So I've probably got about average with them.
Yep.
And so normally I'm used to just chucking transfers at it at this point, but I'm having to be a little bit more reserved with what I do just because I'm trying to balance that up, and it's tough.
No, you're not buying Wilfried Zaha, are you? Probably not, James.
Probably not, James. But like, honestly, I genuinely wouldn't rule it out. What have they got?
It's Leeds away, Southampton away, Everton at home, Wolves away, and you can either come off there and you've got your choice of 14 teams, or you keep one more, West Ham at home, and then you've still got another big cluster. And actually, interestingly, those Tuesday the 25th and the Saturday the 29th, the last few, you could make the last 2, you could make a case for captaincy even. That Tuesday night, the 25th, is awkward. So you've got obviously Leeds against Leicester, Wolves against Palace, and Villa against Fulham. Now, actually, on my strategy currently right now, there's every chance I'll land on that night and have the 3 that would be of interest: Watkins, Maddison, and Zaha. Every possibility. And then Saturday the 29th, you've got Arsenal against Chelsea. I might not have any Arsenal players at that point. Now, probably the best alternative would probably be Brighton at home to Wolves.
Yeah.
But Zaha at home to West Ham would be competitive if suddenly he's hit form.
No, I think you're right. I mean, look at the fixture gains that he's got in that short spell. When you bring him in on the 9th, hold him through until the Wolves game, as you say, you could hold him longer than that. But even until then, 4 games over the likes of 1 for Chelsea, 1 for Man United, 1 for Man City. Like, there's not a great deal of downside there, right? So and they're good games too. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to try and talk you away from that, especially in your position where you're looking for someone who's going to be sub 10% owned to try and rocket you up that rank, and he's the kind of player that could do that. So I'm with you on that.
Also, if I got stuck and it's like, oh shit, I've got other problems, he's got to hang around. His last 4: Tottenham away, Bournemouth at home, Fulham away, Forest at home. So those last 4 fixtures, particularly the last 3, are not bad if I did get stuck. Not that I'd want to be stuck with Wilfried Zaha all season. There is another transfer that I'm considering. This is going to sound really mad, I think, to not getting Haaland. If I don't get Haaland on Saturday, I think the player I'm going to buy instead is Solly March for Saliba, which is the completely different spectrums of value. But basically, one way or another along this plan, he's the player I need to facilitate getting those extra value players of Liverpool. Honestly, going to McAllister, Matoma, could say any of that is going to cut me off. So it might be that I get Solly March as part of the plan. You've just got Dunk at the moment, which is what I've got. And I think he's been such a great Sky asset. When they're doing well, he's brilliant to have in this format. You've got any thoughts of getting any extra Brighton? They've obviously got an additional fixture Tuesday the 4th at Bournemouth. But it's a little off-putting now. I think we were expecting that extra Newcastle game, and now it's probably not happening.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get it at some point, right? And they've got more
Yeah, but it's
games.
probably going to be very late now.
Yeah, it's going to be late. You've got it. So the way I see Brighton, like I'd like to have another one or maybe even two in. Not screaming out to me the most obvious time to bring them in. And as you say, like that Newcastle game, if that had gone in the next 3 weeks, I would have probably tried to have scrambled one in. I feel like now could wait a little bit on them. We've obviously got Tottenham and Chelsea coming up. Could probably wait and bring them in on Wednesday 26th, maybe.
Yeah.
We've got Forest away. But I'm definitely looking at March. The Toma's a good option too. They've just got so many good options. In many ways, it's a pity that Colwell and Webster are kind of trading places at that other centre-back spot because you could easily double up on them at the back and they're starting on 5 points a game. So maybe if there's an injury to one of those two later on, you could go there. But in terms of if you need someone to open up the budget in the immediate term, right, then March, he might even be the highest scoring midfielder since the World Cup.
I'll tell you because I made a note of this actually. Interesting of you to mention it, catching me on the hop. I'll tell you, he's the 5th highest scoring player overall since of midfielders since the World Cup. Rashford, Saka, Rodri, he's level with Martinelli, so joint 4th in terms of returns since the World Cup. 82 points. Only Haaland and Kane from the forwards with more. No defender has scored more. No goalkeeper has scored more. So, 6th or 7th overall since the World Cup?
That's unbelievable. That's unreal. So it just shows you. And the thing is, I've always been a bit worried about him because he's not really a Sky asset, is he? Right? Because he's not picking up tackles. He's not getting passes. He's unlikely to get. I mean, he's picked up a couple of shot ones, but it's not bread and butter for him. But at that price, in a team that's got extra games eventually and they're playing well, and you need an enabler, feels like a bit of a no-brainer.
And also, I think there is a nice kind of contingency with him that should I get him and he gets injured, oh shit, I've not got money in the bank. What do I do? Back to Paulinho.
Yeah. Well, trusty.
Well, he'll also have the extra fixture Wednesday, the 3rd of May now with Liverpool away. So, and with him, you're not so bothered about the fixture. You know, you could get 4 or 5 points in that fixture quite easily. So, that's the contingency, I think. And interestingly, if it was Paulinho with the extra and now off the back of the ban, we'd go, oh yeah, tackle monster, get him in. But exactly what you said with March doesn't feel right for Sky. And yet in different formats, they'll be scrambling to get players like him and Mitoma at the moment. It doesn't feel quite as strong for this format, but they enable, if you want to get to that Liverpool power, okay, after obviously the Chelsea fixture, they have their own kind of lull where there isn't a period. But if the Brighton players are sitting there in place, that's what's going to enable you the power around it. So yeah, it's Haaland or March for me on Saturday. That's weird, but that's literally how it's going to. I'd need to get March at some stage to make the rest of the plan happen, basically. So at the moment, I'm leaning into going March, and not because I think he'll outscore Haaland. Just to clarify.
Oh, who knows if he keeps playing the way he's playing? You go. I mean, you're looking at going from Saliba to March, possibly.
Yeah.
Right. And that's if Saliba's out. So you obviously asked me the question earlier on: how long would he need to be out for to justify the move? It seems like if he's missing the weekend, that's enough for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think my plan at the moment with the Arsenal boys is to come into the Sunday the 16th from Friday the 21st and not adding anything new, is to come through with Zinchenko and Saka to give me a contingency and then bin both after that. That's part of the strategy. And
then no move to get them back in later in the season because there is a fixture swing again. I can't remember the date of it, but then Arsenal can have that. They have a lull with a few games, and then there's a moment where they've got extra games over a lot of other teams.
Yeah, you could go back Sunday the 7th, but a lot of the players you may be selling have that additional midweek fixture still to be arranged. So again, United, City, Chelsea would be another one. Brighton and Newcastle would all have the additional fixture to come back against Arsenal. So if you're going out from the 21st, you're going to miss City, Chelsea. There's teams there have got 5 fixtures in between that period, and Arsenal playing Newcastle Sunday the 7th.
Yeah.
Sure, you can go back there, but I don't think you'd go back heavy. It's Newcastle away, Brighton at home, Forest away, and Wolves at home. They finish with. I don't think you'd go heavy back into it. No. But at the same time, they've been the best team in the league. They've got the best value assets, them and Brighton, basically. You know the risk.
And that's the thing. That part of the reason why I went so heavy on Arsenal was because I think 4 or 5 weeks ago, there weren't many teams that were playing particularly well, and there weren't many great value assets around in general, or anyone doing ripping up trees. So I think steaming into them back then was the right thing to do. I also did the same with City. Like, I know you did so as well earlier in the year, and got burned a bit by that. I think probably part of the reason why I'm 16th and not up next to Paul in second literally is one move. He brought in Pope at the overhaul, and I had Ederson.
I looked, interestingly, just going back to, you mentioned obviously returnees since the World Cup. Ederson, 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 goalkeepers, including Gavin Bazunu, have scored more points in Sky than Ederson since the World Cup. Let's make of that what you will.
Sickening.
It really is. Really, really is. A few quick ones before we let you go, Niall. Saturday, I think Haaland versus Saka for captaincy. Sunday's probably Rashford. Any consideration for a West Ham player?
Nah, West Ham aren't doing me just now. No.
Leave it there. Monday, Kane.
Yeah, obvious. Yeah, okay.
The answer to anybody's Tottenham question is no. Wednesday, I guess Rashford at home to Brentford. Tuesday's interesting. Do you know who you want to captain Tuesday? You got the 4 games.
Donkey looking at.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. He's gonna get 120 passes, right? So you're starting on 10 points if he gets a clean sheet. I mean, even if he doesn't get a clean sheet, you're still getting returns there. So I think that's probably where I'm looking. Although there are, there's other contenders, right? You could go for
Maddison at home to Villa, even Watkins at Leicester from that same game, and Chelsea, Liverpool players, obviously. But my instinct is Lewis Dunk for next Tuesday as well, mate. Want to finish on a few questions that we've had in from the listeners. Track Star G says, best advice for someone who's writing off their season finish and is going for April Manager of the Month now.
Cards on the table. It's not something I've done before, go for a Manager of the Month. But if I was going to go for it, I think
you'd win it.
Really a good month to do it. I guess that the issue for him, he wants to set his team up in advance, right? So hopefully he's making transfers this week to put himself in position. That's the first thing I'd say.
Yeah.
Bear in mind the game week ends. Current game week ends and restarts tomorrow. So get your team set today. Hopefully, you'll listen to this now, and then attack it. I would say look at the teams with loads of games in the short term. Probably bulk up on defenses, and then just do 3 for 1. Shift it onto another team with a 3 or 4 for 1, and shift it onto another, and just try and get as many fixtures as you can out of the transfers that you make.
Yeah. So an example of that would be start with a blanket Arsenal defence, move it to a blanket Man United on Sunday, and then the next Sunday move it to blanket Liverpool or Crystal Palace and Wilfried Zaha if you feel really fruity. You're all wasting your time doing April Manager of the Month because Ian Parring's going for it. Talking of which, Ian wants to know, interested in our views as what would be the best SkyFF game format in regards to 1, overhauls, 2, 1 or even none. Whereabouts in the season do you think it should be positioned if you'd have one? Any thoughts on that?
I've actually quite liked this year's approach with the one
much better.
Yeah, much better. I think the problem was that last year, the period between first overhaul and second overhaul, you almost got to a stage where 3 weeks out, the value from making a transfer was totally nothing. So everyone just kind of sat. The game got quite dull and it was boring. You were just crawling your way to the overhaul. So I think that's been quite a good thing. 1 is enough. I think 2's too many personally. But I do like having 1. Where would you have it? If you're only going to have 1, maybe after Christmas, FA Cup weekend. I don't know, possibly.
I would say last international break before Christmas. Sod it.
Yeah.
Although I would honestly answer it and say, nah, scrap it.
Scrap it fully.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be for that.
40 or 50 transfers?
Oh, that's not a good question. I'll be honest, when they brought 50 in, I was like, this is too many. Um, I quite like the strategy of having like it being quite tight, so you had to really think about what you were doing. But actually, I feel like the transition to 50 has been pretty seamless, and it's almost not. I've not noticed it too much.
Yeah, it's been all right.
So it's been fine. I think 40, 50, both. I prefer like I think the less transfers, the more it benefits players that take their time and think about it. But
Agree.
equally, 50's not been it's not been outrageous.
Yeah, because I had 50. I thought I didn't have to think about it as much this year. A man of the match. Would you like to see a return for that?
I'm going to give you a controversial take on this. I quite like Man of the Match awards. Like I actually
Ooh.
I used to enjoy sitting refreshing the Sky app. You know,
See which
6 o'clock.
reporter had
Yeah.
not watched the game.
Sending messages furiously to the Twitter account. What's going on? You've not given a man of the match in the Crystal Palace Bournemouth game. Um, but no, I quite liked it. I wasn't a big fan of the way it was decided. Maybe you could do it based upon like fault mob rating or something like that, something a bit more objective. But I think it's maybe taken away a little bit from the game. And also, it was quite good to captain a player. And it gave you more incentive, I think, to take risks on captaincy with players that you know are the talisman for that team. Like, because Rafinha, for example, Zaha is another example. Like, these are players that were probably going to dominate the man of the match award for that team. So I think it's maybe taken away a little bit, but like that's a controversial take, and I appreciate most others will not agree with me.
Right, couple of quick fires. Tim Barry wanted 3 differentials, but I'm going to ask you for 1 for the rest of the season, but not Wilfried Zaha.
Oh, come on, that's what I was going to say.
Was you really? It's only because I'll put him in your head.
No, you're gonna ruin my season there. 1 differential for the rest of the season. Wesley Fofana.
Oh, I like that. Like that. Entry points might be challenging. And he's an injury dart, is worth saying. Obviously, wasn't he pulled out of the France squad. Lee Giles finally wants to know, why did Niall have to be in all of my cash mini leagues?
Yeah, I mean, Lee's taken enough money off me in previous years, so I'm absolutely not apologising for that. Sorry, my cat's decided to join.
There's a cat on screen. Hello, cat. Meow.
There you go.
No one's going to clip that. Niall, thank you so much. Where can everyone follow you on the Bird app? And have you got anything you want to sell or promote, mate?
Yeah, so jump on Twitter. To be honest, I've been a lot less active since looking. I stopped doing the pods, but I'm going to try and dig him out at some point. We can do a one-off special at some
Get
point.
something going with Luke, mate. Love you both.
We need to. It's just it's quite. Sometimes I know there's been a few grimaces today at some of the suggestions you've made, but by contrast to Luke, I mean, some of the outrageous shouts he'd give me. Sometimes I couldn't tell if he was just trying to wind me up or he was being genuinely sincere with some of the shouts that he had. But he's brilliant. He's such a good person to bounce ideas off of as well, and like. He's an absolute guru when it comes to not only this game but other formats as well.
Yes,
as to be fair, you are too. So, just my handle's just Niall on Twitter. I'm sure you'll tweet it out at the end of this. But
how many eyes?
2 I's, 2 A's, 2 L's. There you go. Easy to know.
No, absolute pleasure. Take care of yourself. We must do this again sometime. Thank you so much, mate. Tom Campbell at Utley TC is joining me now tomorrow for the Planet FPL podcast. I don't know what's coming. Tom's got some discussion points and says, don't we? You know what's happening. Let's talk about it. Okay. Sounds like some fun. I don't know who's going to be guesting with me next Wednesday for the Sky Fantasy Football podcast. So consider this an invite to anyone who fancies it. My DMs are open. Other than that, just leaves me to say thank you again so much to Niall. Play it your way, guys. Have a great week. Cue music, please, man. Show.